This video covers which nuts and seeds are low histamine, which are high histamine, and why they're classified that way.
Hi, this is Max from lowhistamineeats.com, where we make and share histamine-friendly recipes.
Before we just list off each one, let's talk about the issues with nuts and histamine. Most nuts and seeds are low histamine, but there are numerous plant toxins in them that can make them hard to handle for many people with histamine issues or sensitive stomachs. It's generally agreed that the only high histamine nuts are peanuts, cashews, and walnuts. However, even that vague categorization can be misleading. Some people can handle high histamine nuts or seeds because their biochemistry is uniquely prepared to process them better, or they're consuming them in conjunction with other foods that lessen their impact. There are 5 ways in which foods can affect our histamine response, as classified by the Swiss Interest Group on Histamine Intolerance, or SIGI. Number 1 are histamine-containing foods, so aged meats, most cheeses, any kind of fermented foods. Number 2 are foods with biogenic amines. Some fruits, nuts, and legumes fall into this category. Histamine liberators, number 3. Alcohol is a histamine liberator, as are some crustaceans and shellfish, chocolate, citrus, tomatoes, etc. Number 4 are diamine oxidase inhibitors, meaning that these foods can inhibit the activity of the enzyme that breaks down histamine, that clears it from your system. And these include alcohol, again, caffeinated beverages, and some medications. And the last one is increased intestinal permeability. So foods that really irritate the gut, like hot spices, gluten, alcohol once again, and foods high in lectins, which are an irritating plant chemical. So what about the other components? All nuts and seeds also contain nutrients needed to build molecules like DAO and to otherwise keep the body running. They're generally good for you, so the most important thing is to reintroduce them slowly. Start with higher fat nuts that will be lowest in all biogenic amines like macadamias, pistachios, and pecans. Remember to buy your nuts and seeds as fresh and raw as possible because the older and more processed they are, the more likely they are to build up mold and other irritants. If you need to store your nuts or seeds, refrigerate them in an airtight container and use them within a few months. Some nuts also freeze pretty well, like pecans and macadamias. Now let's talk about the irritating plant toxins in nuts and seeds. Nuts and seeds of all types contain balanced proteins and healthy fats, as well as fiber and other complex carbs that are good for your digestive system. They're a great source of a wide range of vitamins and minerals, but they're also high in phytic acid, lectins, oxalates, and sometimes salicylates. Let's go over each of these one by one. Phytic acid is a fiber-associated form of phosphorus, meaning that it is found in foods which contain a fair amount of fiber, like nuts, and it's known to impair the absorption of iron, zinc, and calcium from food. But soaking and later baking phytic acid-rich foods at a low temperature can break down most of the phytic acid, making the items safer to consume. Oxalate is a protective substance used to regulate calcium levels, but oxalate buildup can lead to kidney stones. And high dietary oxalate has also been implicated in vulvar pain syndrome, but regardless of symptomology, anyone sensitive to oxalates should avoid foods rich in it, like nuts, seeds, and legumes. Lectin is a potentially inflammatory type of carb-binding protein, meaning it's found in foods rich in carbs, including a lot of fruits and vegetables, and nuts and seeds. And lectin can cause damage to the gut wall and lower nutrient absorption in very large amounts. Research has shown that heating or sprouting high lectin foods, like seeds and nuts, can drastically reduce their impact, an easy fix which also applies to all sorts of nuts and seeds. Salicylate is a salt of salicylic acid, which is formed to protect plants from predators and prevent rotting. Large amounts of salicylate are lethal for any human or other people, although most people can handle dietary levels with no issue at all. But for those with a sensitivity, salicylates can cause bodily reactions such as eczema, asthma, and stomach aches. But before we get to the low histamine nuts and seeds, there seems to be a lot of confusion around why peanuts are generally accepted to be high in histamine. This is strangely not because they're actually very high in histamine. It's because they're a so-called histamine liberator, that term number 3 from the 5 ways that nuts and seeds can bother you, or foods can bother you. And this histamine liberator is a mysterious term often used to describe foods that have been found in certain studies from the 1950s and 60s to cause a histamine release in some number of subjects. Sounds vague, right? It's now theorized that this classification has both to do with the increasing prevalence of peanut allergies and the high level of other biogenic amines present in peanuts. Either way, if you feel that your histamine intolerance is triggered by peanuts, it's best to avoid them altogether. And consider giving them a try when you're feeling less reactive if you still want them in your diet. Instead, consider other types of nuts and seeds that are widely considered low histamine. Let's start with almonds. Almonds are a very healthy snacking option with balanced proteins and healthy fats, plus fiber and some complex carbs. They're also a great source of vitamin E and magnesium, and one of the most protein-dense nuts out there. Brazil nuts are another great option. They're a great source of selenium, a trace mineral and antioxidant that supports cellular function and has also been found to stabilize mast cells, one of the cell types that releases histamine. But you can get too much selenium if you eat more than 2 or 3 small Brazil nuts per day, so you should consume them in great moderation. Chestnuts are also a reliable low histamine nut or nut flour option. They have a mild, sweet, nutty flavor and a soft, buttery texture when roasted, which many people compare to sweet potato. This makes them a great option for grain-free baking, like in my chestnut flour crepes, linked in the description. Chia seeds are an inflammation-fighting low histamine seed, packed with both protein and fiber. They're rich in short-chain omega-3 fats that help fight inflammation on a cellular level, and they're quite plain tasting, so they can be customized, like in my chia seed pudding. Flax seeds, generally eaten as flax meal, are a low histamine way to get your daily fiber or replace eggs in a recipe. While some people with the tyramine issue may want to avoid flax seeds and other seeds and nuts, flax is an otherwise healthy food to add back into your diet and also a great source of inflammation-fighting omega-3 fats. Hazelnuts have some level of biogenic amines other than histamine, which can slow the clearing of histamine from the system, but most people tolerate them just fine. They're also high in manganese and offer a fair amount of copper and vitamin E. Hemp seeds are a great plant-based source of protein, as well as vitamin E, magnesium, and manganese. Some studies have found, however, that hemp's protein is low in the amino acid lysine, which you can make up by eating lentils, pistachios, or pumpkin seeds. Macadamia nuts, as previously mentioned, are a fatty low histamine nut that's native to Australia and famously grown in Hawaii. Somewhat similar to the pili nuts covered later on, macadamias are very fatty and grow best in humid tropical environments, so they're pretty expensive and often a bit aged once they reach mainland Americas, Europe, and elsewhere. Pecans are a delicious treat when prepared right, but they're also great on top of salads, in homemade trail mixes, and as part of a gluten-free pie crust, surprisingly. Some sources mark pecans as high in histamine because they contain other biogenic amines, just like hazelnuts, which are cleared from the body through the same means as histamine. This means that pecans can sometimes trigger a reaction if their histamine is already very high, so don't reintroduce pecans or really any other nut or seed until your histamine bucket is lower. Pili nuts are unusual to find outside of specialty stores unless you happen to live in their native land of the Philippines. They're a high-fat nut somewhat similar to macadamias or pine nuts, but with an even lighter flavor. This has made them very popular for the keto diet, making them much more globally available in all sorts of flavors, though I like them with just salt. Pine nuts are a safe low histamine nut option, rich in iron and magnesium and very high in heart-healthy fats. The edible seeds of the pine tree, pine nuts toast up nicely to top salads or blend up beautifully into a butter to spread on gluten-free toast or stir into soup. Pistachios are a great low histamine sweet or snack, depending on how they're treated, but they also make a great topper on salads or nut butter for sandwiches and are a great source of protein, copper, and vitamin B6. However, they're very easy to overload on, so be sure to moderate your intake. Pumpkin seeds, or pepitas, are a great low histamine source of magnesium, zinc, and iron. They're rich in protein and fiber and can even be made into a delicious pumpkin seed butter to spread on crackers and other snacks. Sesame seeds can be enjoyed whole or unwhole as sesame seed oil or as tahini, also known as sesame seed butter. The whole food forms of sesame seeds are high in both fiber and protein, as well as being a good source of calcium, magnesium, and iron. Tahini is a ground version of the seeds and a versatile ingredient that can be used in dips, dressings, and sauces. Finally, we have sunflower seeds, which come from those very same yellow flowers and are a great low histamine snack or addition to a meal. They're very rich in the antioxidant vitamin E, as well as magnesium and selenium, and a great source of healthy fats. Sunflower seed butter is also a tasty alternative to peanut butter for those with peanut allergies or issues. That's it for this overview of low histamine nuts and seeds. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe.